Hey friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing my top 10 favorite books slash series, some of these are series, ever, as of right now. Obviously, all of this is subject to change depending on, you know, future reads, my mood, anything like that. But I do have these in order from my 10th spot all the way to my number 1 spot. So why don't we just dive on into this and see which books are on here. So first we have to start with probably one of the best nonfictions I have ever read in my whole life, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I am a person who normally is just like, you know, this nonfiction, it was good, it was fine, it was perfectly sustainable, whatever, like, that's great. Normally I don't really dive into nonfiction or really care for them all that much, but man, this book was just so good, and I highly suggest if you do plan on reading this to listen to the audiobook, because Jeanette does narrate it herself, and it is such a fantastic job. She does a wonderful job in this book of relaying her story as if it... Sorry, my neighbor is doing stuff outside and my dog can't handle it. Okay. As I was trying to say, she does an amazing job in this story of relaying this information, her life, as if you were right there in that moment. Like, it doesn't feel like somebody telling their story, it feels like you're right there in the moment of her telling her life story. In this, she talks about the abuse that she suffered at her mother's hands, both physical and emotional, and I would say even sexual abuse that she experienced at her mother's hand. She talks about her mother basically teaching her how to be anorexic and bulimic, and always having to be at like 89 pounds as like a grown woman being at 89 pounds. I mean, yes, she is a petite, smaller woman, but so but you know, that's still not an ideal weight for somebody to be. And it also, you know, talks to her with her realization of what was happening with her was abuse that she was suffering at the hands of her mother. And I think the main thing that I really liked about this and learned a lot from this was her experience with her eating disorder. Because I've never experienced anorexia or bulimia, but I thought she really depicted that very, very well, and I love this book. I think about this book very often, which is why it's on this, and I always suggest it to people, and I really want my mom to read it, but she doesn't like the title. She doesn't like the title. She doesn't like the fact that I like it because of what the title is. But I'm like, Mom, trust me, it is so much better than that, and you will be happy her mom is dead too. All right, next is a series that is incomplete, but it's okay that it's incomplete by me. I mean, yes, would I want the ending? Of course I do, but from what we have of these 5 books, I can't imagine most things being better than this, but it is a big reason why it's number 9 on the list instead of any higher up, because it is not finished, and that is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. If you don't know about A Song of Ice and Fire, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but this is actually what kicked me into my reading journey as an adult. So growing up, like, I didn't read that much. I have dyslexia, so reading was always such a chore, and it was always so difficult, and it was always something that I hated doing, mainly because they made me do it in school. I hated reading. And so I didn't read that much when I was growing up. I read some Ellen Hopkins books, but I didn't read that much while I was growing up. So after watching the Game of Thrones TV show, and really loving the first like 6 seasons, and then being kind of disappointed by season 7, and then just hating season 8, I was like, no, I have to know what the author says is the ending, and unfortunately I don't know if I'm ever gonna get that, but fortunately for me, I did read these books and fell head over heels in love with fantasy and this world and these characters. And obviously the show helped with that, but these books are so much better than the TV show. I'm gonna be quite honest. There's stuff that happens in this that they didn't put in the TV show at all. And I think that was a mistake on their part, because there is characters that are not in that are in this that I want to know so much more about. And I really need to do a reread of these now that I've read so much more, because I think I would get a different experience, a different love out of these if I did that. And this world, these characters, everything, like I just love this world so much. And this definitely kickstarted my journey of where I am now in reading, how I'm reading, you know, well, last year I only read 30, but mainly how I'm reading, you know, 50 books at least a year, and loving reading and doing that instead of watching TV now. And like, I'm really thankful for this series for doing that for me, because I love reading. Obviously, I made a whole channel dedicated to it. So yeah, that's why this is on this list. Next is an all-time favorite author. This is number 8. That is this entire series of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first book, the 5th season. Oh my gosh. So if you've been watching any of my vlogs, you will know that I just finished reading her other her duology, which is the Dreamblood duology, and loving that so much. And now I feel like I need to reread this trilogy to see if it's still the #1 N.K. Jemisin, or if the Dreamblood duology is taking that seat. So wow. This is probably one of the most unique things I have ever read. This is told partly in second person, which is very interesting to me. And I think she does an incredible job explaining why it's done in second person. If you finish the rest of the series, you will know why it's done in second person. Actually, I think, I don't remember if you figure out in this book why it's done in second person. I think you do. But it's done so well. Her female characters in this are done fantastically. I love them so much. The world building in this is amazing. I think what you'll find in a lot of these, especially the ones involving fantasy, I'm going to talk about the world building being so fantastic, and that's because that's what I love in fantasy, is world building. And this world is so cool. So you have like these magical beings that people fear, and that they're not allowed freedoms that other people are allowed, but they're used by the people to stop what's known as 5th seasons. But they can also create them. They're extremely powerful magic users who can basically bend the earth and control weather patterns and do just a bunch of crazy shit like that. So this series is so good. And N.K. Jemisin's writing, she's probably one of my favorite writers. I think she's just amazing, and I can't wait to read everything this woman has ever written. I already bought another trilogy from her because I need her in my life all the time. All right, next is what I would classify as grimdark fantasy. And if it's not doing what this is doing, I don't count it as grimdark. Obviously, you know, Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire was considered grimdark, but I just think it's actually not grimdark. It's just more of a realistic fantasy other than the traditional type fantasy. Now, the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence, this first book being Prince of Thorns, this is grimdark. In my humble opinion, this is what grimdark is. So anytime anybody's talking about grimdark, I'm like, if it is not doing what this is doing, I don't think it's grimdark. This has an extremely unlikable protagonist who does horrible things, but if you read on in the trilogy, it does explain why he does these things and why he is the way he is. Now, that doesn't make it right what he does, but it does explain a lot of what he's doing and what's going on there. So if you want to give Jorg that, then you can. Jorg is, I have to say, one of my favorite characters. That's probably pretty fucked up to say just because of who Jorg is, but I love the way Mark Lawrence depicts him and like the way that he makes, the way he interrogates his character is written so well. Mark Lawrence's writing is more difficult to get into. It takes a while to get into his writing, in my opinion, because he is definitely a more lyrical writer, more lyrical than what I normally prefer, but this is so good. And this series is very difficult to read, not like Malazan difficult to read, but it goes back and forth in time. It kind of plays with time in a way that where maybe you don't always understand what's going on, and I really enjoyed that in this. And Jorg as a character is just amazing, and I love the band of brothers that's in this as well. And I still need to read that short story collection, but Prince of Thorns is just something I will never get out of my mind, and not in a bad way, but in like a very, very good way. Obviously, that's why it's number, what, 7 on the list. So yeah, if you haven't read this, read it. If you love grimdark, know that this is fucked up. There is horrible things that happen in this. It's not Joe Abercrombie grimdark. It is really, it's more than that. So yeah. All right, next is my favorite classic of all time, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is so good, guys, so good. I have never in my life loved a classic like I've loved Frankenstein, and I think you can take this in so many different ways of loving a classic and knowing what a story is really talking about when it's talking to you. Because how I depicted Frankenstein, which was probably not how Mary Shelley did, but maybe she did, I don't know, but is basically, you know, talking about the different parts of you that you hide as a person from other people, and you know that the monster is the darkest parts of Victor Frankenstein that Victor Frankenstein never wanted to show, and the monster is like that realization of that personification of that, and the destruction in him trying to destroy that destroy the monster is, you know, him trying to destroy that part of himself. And I just I love this book so much. I need to do a reread, especially of this edition that I just got, because this has artwork in it and everything like that, and it's such a beautiful edition. It has cool sprayed edges. But anyways, I love this book to the world and back. Like, I know when I reread this, I'm gonna get more out of it than I did the first time, and I can't wait to do a reread of this. I love Mary Shelley's writing. I really need to look up more of her books to figure out if I want her to be a new favorite author. So yeah, if you haven't read Frankenstein yet, you need to go and read it. And you can be like, oh, I don't like classics. No, this is way more than just like your classic. It is easy to read. It applies to modern times, and it can apply to you just as a person. So please read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's so good, so good. This was number 6, I do believe. Okay, halfway through the list, we are at number 5, and that is probably one of the funniest books I have ever read in my life, and that is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I love this book so much. I have read the first 3 novels in this, but the first one, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is my favorite of them. I love Ford Prefect. I love all of these characters so much. I think the story is hilarious and always hits on its theming and applies all the time to our reality, and it's just fucking hilarious. Marvin is one of my favorite characters of all time. He reminds me of Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, and this is just, it's just too funny, and I love how just funny it is. And I do also really enjoy Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which is the second book in this, but after that I was kind of like, yeah, it's okay, I don't really want to read anymore. Like, I still just love this book so much, and I would highly recommend, if you're just looking for a short, fun read and you've never read Hitchhikers, go out and read Hitchhikers, because it's giving its life. And I don't know what else to say about this besides I just love it so much. So yeah. Classic that I have. Oh, and I've also read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy multiple times. And that also goes for this book. And I plan on rereading this book this year as well. And that is 1984 by George Orwell. This is a must read for everybody, in my opinion. Like, if you want to take one book out of this that I think everybody should read, and that is 1984 by George Orwell. This is my favorite George Orwell by far. I love Animal Farm, but not as much as I love 1984. If you want to talk about something that stands the test of time and that is always relatable to our time, unfortunately, that is 1984. No dystopian or utopian, I guess it's technically a utopia, matches this. Like, anytime I've ever read anything else, I'm just like, that comes nowhere fucking close to how awesome 1984 is. And just the references and just the impact that this has on our reality. And I just love 1984. I love George Orwell's writing. The audiobook to this is also very fantastic and very good. So if you want to listen to it as an audiobook, please do. It's very short. Please read 1984. It will open your eyes to the reality of our situation sometimes. Yeah, that's 1984 is just the best. All right, we are in the top 3. So my last, I guess, real classic on this list is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have read this, I don't even know how many times. I love reading this, especially like at Christmas. This just feels like your grandfather is telling you a story. Yeah, you won't see Lord of the Rings on this list because it's just not one of my top favorites, but The Hobbit is. I love this story so much. I love these dwarves. I love Bilbo. I just the way the story is told is so good. One of my favorite scenes in this book is when they're going when they're going to meet Barin. He's like the guy who shapeshifts into a bear. And when they're going to go see him, and Gandalf's way of getting all of these dwarfs into his house. And it's just so funny. It just cracks me the fuck up every time I read it. Every time I read this, that makes me laugh. Do you know how many times I've read this? A lot. And every time I read that, it makes me laugh. Also, another scene that really makes me laugh is when they are in the forest and they're like lost in the forest, and they see the elves and they're like, oh my god, finally somebody here to help us. And they run up to the elves and the elves are like, oh my god, no! And they just disappear. And then they reappear and they keep doing that to them. Oh my god, it's so funny. Like, there's so many scenes that I wish were in the movies, but they're not. And I love this so much. Every time I read this, I also I've read this a lot physically. I have not listened to Andy Serkis's version yet, and I need to do that because I know I'd like it. But every time I read this, I always play the songs, because they did a lot of the songs in the movie. So I listen to the songs when we get to those points. But man, The Hobbit is just fucking life. Like, I love this book to the moon and back. It's amazing. Highly suggest. Even if you read Lord of the Rings, you were like, nah, like, trust me, this is so good, so worth your time. I always try to read this at Christmas because it just fills you with so much hope and joy, and just, I love it so much. All right, top 2. Now, number 2, when it's finally complete, when the whole shebang is finally complete, will probably beat number 1. But for right now, it's not. So that is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Whew. This is Way of Kings, the one that I'm holding. This is epic fantasy at its finest. At its finest. I love this so much. The characters in this are amazing. Shallan and Pattern are my people. I love Shallan so much. Fight me, I don't care. Shallan is my girl from this day to the end of fucking days. I love her so much. And Pattern, oh, just, there are scenes with them that have made me sob, cry, sob. And when I think about them, I start to cry. Like, I don't even want to, I can't even do Pattern's voice right now. Like, I would just start sobbing because I love this series so much. Kaladin is not my favorite, and not even close. I'm not a big fan of Kaladin, but everybody else, Adolin, Shallan, Dalinar, Pattern, all of Navani, Yasna. Oh, I love them so much. Like, I am so ingrained in this series. Like, I love them so much. Like, I nitpick everything. I'm just like, oh, what is this? What is that? Oh my God. And I love to talk about this series. Ugh. Gush. I love the Stormlight Archive. Love, love, love the Stormlight Archive. That's why it's number 2. Like I said, once this is completely complete, not just the 5th book coming out, maybe the 5th book coming out could overtake my number 1. But I would think after the 10 book thing is fucking complete, could overtake my number 1, which is going to take several years, at least a decade, if not more, to complete. But, woo! Stormlight Archive, there's no words. I love this so much. All right, and number 1 on the list is also another series. And this is a series that people love to hate on. And it hurts my soul every time I hear people talking shit about it. Every single time. Every time. It hurts my soul. But I love this more than life itself. And that's The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. This is the Eye of the World. As much as I was just gushing over Stormlight Archive, these characters are my heart and fucking soul. Egwene, I love her so much. She is one of the best character arcs I have ever read. And I just think she's amazing. But Rand, he's also fucking amazing. I love his character arc, his fucking changes throughout the series. Like, everybody in this is so good. And I love every single book in this series. So my favorite books in this series are the last book, which I can't think of the name of right now, Lord of Chaos, which is book 6, and Shadows of Self. That's a Brandon Sanderson book. Shadow Rising, which is book 4. Those are my favorite in the series. I love all of these books. There is one book that I don't like, and that is, I bet every Wheel of Time fan knows exactly what book that is, and that is Crossroads of Twilight. Or yeah, Crossroads of Twilight. That is the worst book in the series, but out of 14 books, having one that is bad is just saying a lot. And I know everybody's like, the slog. No, there's no slog, okay? Just get over it. And also, another thing I'm just gonna put out there. The main critiques I hear is always of Robert Jordan's writing. If you are interested in this story at all, but you can't stand his writing, listen to the audiobooks. They're freaking worth it. They are narrated by Kate Redding and Michael Kramer, and they are done amazingly. So if you don't like his writing, do that. If you still, if you read book 1 and you're like, nah, I didn't like anything that was happening in that. I don't like anything that's happening in that. Don't continue. It doesn't change. It doesn't get better. I mean, obviously the world expands and, you know, like it builds upon this first book, obviously, and the world expands and it becomes not so token derivative at all, actually. And I think it's amazing and worth continuing. But if you're like, I hate the writing, I hate the way he tells story, blah, 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 that doesn't change. So don't continue. Okay? Stop trashing on my favorite thing ever. It hurts. It hurts. But I love this so much. The world building, the culture building. He has so many different cultures within this, and they are built so fucking great. The ones he doesn't even barely touch on, like, you know them. They're real cultures, and oh, I love it so much. That's why I love world building so much, is because of this series. And oh my God, like, I'm sorry to you people who hate Wheel of Time. I'm sorry that whoever hurt you that badly. But God, this series is so good. I'm so tired of people talking shit about it. Ugh. God. Wheel of Time. God, I love it so much. This is my number one, if you can't tell. I'm very attached. So don't talk shit about it in my comments, because I will be very upset and you will be blocked forever. But yeah, let's calm down. Let's simmer. Those are my top 10 favorite books / series of all time as of right now. In the comments below, let me know if you've read any of these, what you think about them. Don't talk shit about the Wheel of Time, otherwise you will be cut. And let me know what your favorite series and books are of all time, and we'll talk soon. Bye.